Welcome to this calf rearing full performance webinar brought to you by NZAgbiz, presented by Dr Sue McCord from AgResearch and Michael Shallcrass from Fonterra. Mike is a veterinary program manager with an extensive background in veterinary science. Mike is passionate about identifying and promoting the best farming practices across New Zealand, working closely with Kiwi farmers to ensure sustainable and successful outcomes for their herds. Sue is a senior scientist at AgResearch, who has spent much of her career researching livestock rearing, survival and nutrition for animals raised for the meat and dairy industries. Sue is passionate about sharing this expertise to empower farmers and drive innovation in animal care and nutrition.
Hello everyone, welcome, and hopefully we've got some interesting information to share with you today. The first thing I want to talk about is kind of how do you know if your colostrum delivery system is working as intended. Colostrum is not milk. It's that that very first milking after calving. Colostrum is higher in energy and fats and proteins than normal milkers, and I guess critically, it's really high in antibodies, and it's only that very first milking, which may be done by the calf in the paddock. It might not be the milk that you're collecting in the shed. So that's kind of why we talk about the importance of testing it for its Brix meter reading or its quality beforehand, to make sure that the stuff that you're thinking is colostrum is really colostrum. Now, the reason those antibodies are so important is that, next slide, yes, is that calves are unlike humans. Calves are born without a fully developed immune system. So the immune system is there, but it hasn't been primed with antibodies from the mother to give an innate kind of immunity to the bugs that she's been exposed to during her life. So the way that cattle transfer that immunity from the mother to the calf is through colostrum, and because those antibodies are only in that really early colostrum, it's important that colostrum is what the calf gets. Now, the other thing that happens, as well as the antibody levels in the colostrum declining over time, is that the calf's ability to absorb those antibodies declines over time. So that's kind of the why we want calves to be getting lots of colostrum as early as possible in their life. You've probably seen recommendations around within the first 24 hours, making sure they get it then. That's kind of to fit in with common New Zealand farming practice. The reality is it's the sooner the better. So particularly if you've got calves that you aren't confident they've drunk from their mother, getting 2 litres of colostrum into them kind of ASAP, and then another 2 litres a few hours after that. A newborn calf stomach, ideally you'd feed them more than that, but a newborn calf stomach can't hold much more than 2 litres. So that's why we can't talk about splitting those feeds out into 2 litre batches.
Thanks for that, Mike. And hi, everybody. Just following on from that, I'd just like to share a few results from a trial that we did here at AgResearch a few years ago that really highlight why it's so important for the newborn calf to get that good quality colostrum. In this study, we compared what we would call gold colostrum. So in this particular study, the Brix on average was about 23 versus poorer quality colostrum in some Friesian Jersey mixed sex calves. And these calves were collected either once or twice daily from the paddock. And so we looked at the interaction between how often the calves were picked up and the quality of colostrum that they were given. In that study, as expected, with the poorer quality colostrum, we did have lower transfer of immunity. As Mike was saying, those antibodies are just not there in the colostrum, and so the calf wasn't able to actually get the benefit of that. But the flow-on effects from that, I think, really help to highlight why good quality colostrum is so important for that newborn calf. In the study, the incidence of scours was 3 times higher in that first 2 weeks of life in the calves that didn't get good quality colostrum. Their growth rate was also lower, about 100 grams a day lower, and that resulted in those calves being 3 kilos lighter at 5 weeks of age. We also looked at the gut of these calves, and in particular the small intestine, where a lot of the nutrients are absorbed. And colostrum contains, as Mike was saying, factors other than antibodies, a whole lot of bioactive factors, growth promotants and other nutrients, and they play a really important role in developing that early neonatal gut. So when the calf is first born, it's having to get used to not getting its nutrition from blood, but by getting it through the liquid feed. And those calves that got the good quality colostrum had a much better developed small intestine, and that enables them to absorb nutrients much more efficiently, and so therefore have better feed conversion ratio. Interestingly enough, the calves in the study, it didn't actually matter whether they were collected once or twice daily from the farm, and that highlights just how important it is to get that good quality colostrum into them as soon as you possibly can, but don't worry if you're not getting that calf as soon as it's born. The most important thing is getting that quality colostrum to the calf. So then I guess the key question there is, how do you know whether your colostrum management system is working? And you guys have probably all heard of failure of passive transfer, or FPT. It's just a fancy name of saying whether or not that calf has actually been able to consume and absorb the nutrients that the antibodies that they need to drive that immune function. Unfortunately, it's not as simple as just having a look at the calf and going, oh, yep, this one's had good colostrum and this one hasn't. There is no visual trait that can tell us that, but we can determine if they've had good passive transfer using a blood test. And so this is something that your vet can help you with. And ideally, you would test a few of your calves, maybe up to 12 calves early in the season, so that you can see whether or not the calves are actually getting that transfer of immunity that they need. And ideally, you test during the season as well, just to see whether good practices have been maintained or whether the colostrum quality is being maintained throughout the season. But the key bit is, see where you're sitting at the beginning of the season, see if it's working. If everything is working fine, you don't need to change anything. But if you're seeing failure of passive transfer, you might need to have a look at how you might be able to address that.
Some kind of practical tips or things you can kind of think about implementing this coming season. Vaccinating your herd. So this is probably fits within a broader concept of kind of trying to set your farm up to be as kind of welcoming for the calves as possible. So vaccinating your herd to make sure that the quality of the colostrum that the cows are producing is as high as possible. You've still got to make sure you get that colostrum into the calves, in a timely enough volume. But that can make a real difference if those calves have got that extra bit of immunity if a challenge comes in. Test the quality of your colostrum and try and keep all the good, that high quality 22 or higher Brix percentage colostrum aside for those newborn calves. If you don't have any high quality colostrum, you can fortify it with colostrum powder just to bring the solids up a bit to make sure they're getting enough of those immune compounds, and really try and push that kind of plenty of colostrum within that 12 to 24 hour window. And then following on from that, good storage and hygiene practices. So in New Zealand, we're actually pretty good at getting enough colostrum into the calves, but because of how it's been pulled and stored, it's often got some significant bacterial contamination. So cleaning all of your storage equipment and harvesting equipment regularly with hot water. Hot water makes a big difference because it breaks down the fat layer that tends to build up otherwise. That will have a big impact on the quality of your stored colostrum.